A Swift Kick in the Ass, episode 71.
Welcome to a Swift Kick in the Ass podcast, hosted by lifelong friends Tom Stewart and John Curren. Today's episode is a special feature covering Robert Greene's 48 Laws of Power.
Welcome, I'm Tom Stewart, and I'm joined with my lifelong childhood friend, John Curren. And today we talk about Robert Greene's best-selling book, The 48 Laws of Power. This chapter is going to be Law 27, play on people's need to believe and create a cult-like following. John, this one's another evil one, man.
It really is. I mean, as I was going through and preparing for the show, it does really appear evil. And if you put it like the title says, creating a cult, that's really kind of scary. And you think, what the hell? Why in the hell would I want to start a cult? But with that being said, the more I kind of drilled down into the content, the more I realized that this is prevalent everywhere. I mean, I started thinking, as politics as a great example,
Yes,
of a cult-like following, but it's in self-help even today.
Yes. You're hitting some target areas. I was right on my note list, man.
Yeah, internet marketing. I mean, it is just throughout society, and I think as much as we want to avoid things like this, it will really give you a lot of power if you follow some of these rules. So, I mean, I've always been against cults and tried to avoid cults, but I think this might have some people creating cults of their own after this episode.
Yeah,
And
we see this a lot, John, even in cult-like followings of certain people like that are leaders in the internet marketing, as you were mentioning,
Absolutely.
or self-help. You obviously see it right now. We have the presidential campaign going on, and it creates that mentality of us versus them. And that's such a
Yes.
cornerstone to creating a cult, because you want the people that are with you to believe in something and demonize something else. And that's very prevalent, and you find in every cult, really. It's one of the cornerstones of it.
Yeah, so Robert Greene in this chapter outlines 5 different steps, and creating the us versus them dynamic is absolutely part of that. But let's go just right into the
John, I just have to say, all other podcasts suck. And I think that our listeners need to stay with us against them. What do you think? We're going to create a cult. But that's what people do. Yeah.
Well,
We'll get to that. I'm sorry to jump in and rain on your parade.
No, you're not raining on my parade. I couldn't agree with you more. As I was reading this, I'm thinking, isn't this what we've been trying to accomplish? Not with the intent of creating a cult, but just developing a following. Any
Actually, to
podcaster
build an
wants-
audience. Yeah.
right? Anybody wants to do this. I mean, so let's just go into the judgment so we don't lose people. The judgment reads: people have an overwhelming desire to believe in something. Become the focal point of such desire by offering them a cause, a new faith to follow. Keep your words vague but full of promise. Emphasize enthusiasm over rationality and clear thinking. Give your new disciples rituals to perform. Ask them to make sacrifices on your behalf. In the absence of organized religion and grand causes, your new belief system will bring you untold power. I mean, doesn't
Power.
and
Power. Darth Sidious. I still think Darth Sidious wrote the 48 Laws of Power, and that's from Star Wars, if people are not familiar with the character. He was the emperor.
Robert Greene talks about how, back in a time long ago, there were charlatans, and charlatans are snake oil salesmen. They would make vague promises. They would trying to sell a product of theirs that really did nothing.
Like
It
penis
could even
enlargement
harm
pills,
people, actually.
like penis enlargement pills.
Yeah, I mean, and in fact, I think, and I'm probably going on a limb here, but I believe that it was the charlatans that really prompted the creation of the Food and Drug Administration.
Go figure.
I think that's true, and if I'm wrong, correct me.
Right,
But
right. No,
that's
but
that's that's what I remember. Um, and to develop a following, you develop power through that, and I think there was a lot of kind of parallels to religion as well. um, but this is much different than religion. I think this is to serve the sole purpose of that charlatan, to benefit them, not to benefit others. So Robert Greene outlines a number of steps to create a cult, and step number one is keeping it vague and simple. Uh, promise something vague that is great and offers transformation. And I think you see this a lot with as particularly in self-help
yes.
these days. And they're promising you the world. And the reason why they want you to keep it vague is so that people can have a picture of it in their own mind. So you're not really doing the work. Um, the people who are listening to you are forming this own picture. They're attributing it to you, but you're not necessarily. It's not, may not be your idea. It's something vague.
And that's
And
that falls a lot of line in with coaching, John. I mean, we see a lot of life coaching, and not to say anything is wrong with life coaching. I mean, what we're talking about on our show delves some into that.
yeah,
However, life coaching is usually, it's not the coach doesn't have all the answers. They get the person to ask the right correct questions to pull their own answers out, and it kind of directs them to where they want to be. And it's exactly what you're saying with some of these self-help gurus, is they'll create like an inner circle, and you might have to pay a lofty many thousands of dollars to join this inner circle to get access to this coach. And we see this all over the place, and it's not unique. And I'm not just saying that it's necessarily bad, because some of these guys actually and girls help people, but you have to be cautious of them.
yeah, absolutely. And another reason for keeping it vague and simple is that your followers will expect you to deliver on those specifics. And I know I've gone to a number of different seminars and conferences, and I'm so excited when I read what the topic of the discussion is, and I think, man, this is going to be great. I am going to get a lot of good answers, and I'm going to be able to solve my problems. And 9 times out of 10, I walk out of that room just completely disappointed because they didn't offer shit. Sorry to drop the S-bomb, but they make these vague, they make it very vague, and what they deliver is, it's not, it doesn't answer any questions. It probably raises more questions than provides answers.
I went to
So
one of these seminars like that, John, once. It was a collection of top name people. I'm talking like Zig Ziglar and Colonel Colin Powell. I mean, General Colin Powell, Adam Walsh's father, John Walsh. A
right,
lot of good people that I wanted to hear and I respect. However, what happened is they give you free tickets. They get a bunch of people in one area. I mean, it was probably like 70,000 people there. And in between their speeches, here comes the pitch. They roll out something. It
right,
sounds like another guy that's going to get another presenter, but what they're presenting is another whole course of very expensive courses to learn how to do stock trading and software that went along with it. That was like, oh yeah,
yeah,
it's super easy. It's red light, green light, and yellow light. And that's how you decide whether you're going to buy your stocks, is you plug in this software. And if it's a green light, you buy. And come on, man. We know that it's not that simple, or those 70,000 people would have signed up and been millionaires by now. So you have to be very skeptical when you walk into these things, because like I said, there was a lot of good information and I was very motivated when I got out, but it's also very temporary when you walk out too, because you feel good for a little while and then you're like, okay, well, now I'm overwhelmed, and what do I really focus on to change?
Yeah, Tom, I have this in my notes for kind of later on in the discussion, but I think it applies here really. Robert Greene states that people are not interested in the truth about change. And you and I know this to be true as well, that there is no pill that you can take. There is no easy solution often. Change, change really starts within yourself, and it takes a lot of hard work and perseverance and seeing things through that are very individual. But most people don't want to hear that. um, motivation only carries you so far, and most of the time most people will quit before they get to their goals. And this created an industry, really. A lot of people have gotten rich just out of other people's desires uh, to change, and there's a desire really for people to believe in miracles. And a lot of these shucksters and charlatans would prey on people and indulge them in this desire to see a miracle, to be part of a miracle.
John,
Uh,
I have seen people, and this is no lie, and from a company that's supposed to be very respected in the self-help field, and I'm not going to mention their name, but I saw something about unicorns and fairies. I've seen things about angels and stuff like that, which I can understand because they people, it comes from people's faith. But unicorns and fairies are directly out of fables and storybooks. And I've seen people, and they're making money having people believe in unicorns and
yeah,
fairies. It's I don't know. It boggles my mind, and I just must think that the people are really desperate, or really that this fills some kind of need, something that happened to them in childhood, that they needed to be in touch with this. Some butterflies and some rainbows, and
yeah, and
boom,
you know,
you're paying me good money every month.
yeah. If you're new to the show, then you might want to know that the reason why Tom and I got into this is because we saw a lot of this going on within self-help. Tom and I have been very interested, very, as individuals and personally involved in self-help and learning about this for a long time. And it really sickens us that people get taken advantage of in that, for that reason. They're out for money, and especially living life on your own terms. It's presented as a person sitting out on the beach with their laptop. Yeah, who doesn't want to make money when they're sleeping? It's a dream, but they don't really necessarily tell you in great specifics on how to do it. And they're just basically, taking your money. Um, Unicorns and fairies. That's what they're
Yes.
offering. It's maybe it is true. I've never seen one,
Maybe it
and
helps
until I
someone.
do,
If it helps someone, hey, more power to them. But
right.
it's just you have to have a very discerning eye when you do sign
Yeah.
up for something like that.
So the second step is to emphasize the visual and sensual over the intellectual. So back in the charlatan days, um, the charlatans set the scene, by appearing, and I'm not going to mention any names either, but you see it time and time again, where whoever's kind of trying to sell their product, they're standing in front of a big mansion. They have a Ferrari or a Lamborghini, and they are painting the picture that they are well off, that they have more money than anybody else. And come on and join me. I'm going to show you how I applied this system and made enough money to buy this mansion and this Ferrari or Lamborghini or Porsche or whatever, whatever, and have all the beautiful women, if they're
And,
men,
and where
surrounding them.
and where else do we see this? We see this in multi-level marketing. We see this in pyramid schemes.
Yeah.
You see this all throughout, and some legitimate businesses. I mean, some people can make money. However, I think back with my parents when I was a kid. My parents sold vitamins. It was some company that came along, and I remember the guy coming in and give us. It was like someone from our church, so it was the same thing. It was always friends and family that people end up driving
Right.
away because they have these businesses. But they say take these vitamins, and then you're going to sell them, and anything that you sell, I get a commission of, and then you get people to work under you, and it keeps on going, and it makes it sound like you're going to be driving around a Ferrari next week because it's people just want this. I remember a good friend of mine in college invited me to dinner, and turned out it was a pitch. It was a spiel for something about, it was another product like that where they were going to say, she was telling me, oh, all brick and mortar, stores are going to go out of business and everything's going to be on catalogs. Well, she was, maybe it was a little ahead of her time before, it was
Yeah.
long before Amazon. This was back in the, early 90s. But it was just a pitch to try to sign me up to something. My parents also did another one. If I don't know if you remember this, John, where they got these oysters or these
Oh, with
clams, and you
yeah.
would you would have these parties, and you cut open these cans. They came in cans, pop out all these clams, and open them up, and you were searching for pearls. So I think there was a guaranteed pearl in each one. And then the whole gag or the whole gig of how they made money is you would get the pearl, but you get to keep the pearl, no problem. But you want to have it mounted on a ring or a necklace, some sort of jewelry. And that's where it came in. We had a catalog, and they could pick out how they wanted it mounted. And of course, it was very expensive. We ended up with a whole bunch of those cans of clams inside my garage for a long time.
Yeah, so it's creating a spectacle of
Mhm.
yourself, and some of the dangers of creating a or trying to create a cult. Um, and I guess one way you can be successful at creating a cult is to not be boring or invite skepticism. You don't want people, you want people to kind of be overwhelmed by the visual and the emotions of it all, so they're not really thinking clearly, and getting kind of like a feeding frenzy. It's much easier to manipulate people when they're thinking with their emotions, or playing to their desires. Maybe they really need money in their life, and so that's a big draw for them. You have this guy holding these a big stack of $100 bills, and he's got the Rolex watch, and he's wearing fancy clothes, and he's in front of his Italian sports car, in front of his Italian villa, and he's just painting this picture and creating a spectacle, um, to kind of pull people in. And
Sure. One of
it's
the triggers of persuasion is scarcity, John, and
right.
and social proof. So you see that, like what you're saying right there is social proof, where someone is showing that, hey, look at me, I've made this money, I've done this. And when you get in a group setting, it might be, look at brother so and so, he has achieved this with his life because he has come along, with our association.
Yeah.
And so it's that, oh, well, if it's working for them and they're a person like me and I can't really see how they're different, well, maybe it will work for me. So they're more tempted to, invest or follow or believe or whatever it might be.
Well, this is that's perfect. That's a perfect segue to step number 3, and that is borrowing the forms of organized religion to structure the group, and it's to
Mhm.
organize it, create a pathway, create a hierarchy which involves ranks and titles and special made up names. Um,
Elder John, lead it on, man.
yeah, and asking for personal sacrifice in order to move up the ladder, so to speak.
Speak to
Uh,
the guru.
and you're making me sound bad.
Sister, bishop,
I'm not
doctor, their
since
brother, as I mentioned before. There,
1995.
there's a lot of cults that will use these words. And John, sometimes what happens is they'll latch themselves on to an established religion. I've seen this in
Yeah.
family and friends. Sometimes they start pitching me on stuff. I'm like, hey, it's that sounds. I don't remember hearing that in the Bible. Where'd that come from? And it's these you find it a lot in doomsday cults, like apocalyptical cults where people think the world's going to end, and they start putting you see it with a lot of. There was a Christian cult not long ago which thought the end of the world was going to happen. What was it, last year or the year before? And then it came and went and never happened. So they go, oh, no, 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 I got the date wrong. It's supposed to happen next
Right.
year. Comes along, we're still here, man. The Mayans, right? The Mayans had prophesied stuff like that, and people latch on and they say, oh, they start putting all these things together and saying, oh, this is going to be the end of the world. And I saw one that was so far out there that they were, what's the Halon Collider? They were talking about this Halon Collider that is a legitimate scientific experiment, that races like particles around this big like what was it, like a 3 mile raceway, and eventually they collide. And what people are saying is that they're afraid of them creating a black hole, and then they say that's going to be the end of the world, and that ties in with these prophecies of this blood red moon that's going to come, and the world's going to
Well,
die in flames or whatever.
yeah, and a lot of people too are attributing just that, what you said with the collider, as far as some of these natural disasters that have been happening lately. It's saying that that is part of it. And you know what? Honestly, I don't know if that's true or not. I mean,
Right. I'm not saying that, they can't make a black hole, but I'm saying that they use that as a premise, and they'll match
right.
that with other historical things that have happened in history to create this anxiety. I know, because I had a family member that was into this, and I started researching, and I was like, this is far out, man. This is not anything that, they were talking about aliens in the center of the earth. I mean, I'm not kidding. I'm not making this stuff up, John. And they were passing it off as Christianity. I was like, dude, this is not Christianity. This is something different. I don't know what this is, but it sounds like a cult.
Yeah.
Remember Heaven's Gate, the guy that thought I think it was like a small computer company, and they ended up thinking that this comet was going to bring a UFO along with it, and they all committed suicide, I think, to spiritually join with this comet. It was like 39 people just dead over a cult.
Yeah, and I think it's really easy to be sucked up into this. Going back to the initial judgment, people are looking for something to believe in. People want to believe in miracles. You know, people want to believe. They want to be told the way things are, and some of this appears so logical. I mean, it seems to make so much sense that you don't really bother doing your homework and really looking into it and looking at it logically and rationally, and emotion gets pulled into it, and you get driven. You get pulled into this. I remember my dad talking a lot about what you just talked about, Tommy, is that the end, people have been talking about the end of the world since the beginning of mankind,
Mm-hmm.
And the second coming, and you have to do this and you have to do that. It's just, we're not knocking religion or anything. We're just saying that beware, because not beware of religion, but beware of when people are trying to pull you into something, especially when they're asking you to make personal sacrifice and send your money into their account.
John, I went, I like camping, right?
Yeah.
I think it was last year. We went to this pretty neat park called Corshon State Park. It's over by Naples in Florida. And it turns out that this park was donated by a former cult. It was what it was is back like in the late 1800s, early 1900s. There was one guy that created this whole philosophy. I think it started in New York, and they migrated down to Florida. And this is like when Florida was like swamp and Everglades and trees, and it was just not mosquitoes. It was not a really nice place to be. But they cleared out all this swamp. He brought all his followers, and what they believed is that the world was hollow and that the universe existed inside the world. And the main guy was like their messiah. And he had like multiple wives. And then they had like the rest of the people that were just like regular follows. followers, they could have sex to recreate, but most of them were celibate, except for this one guy. And I think he was
Like
knocking
the
it up with
king bee.
ladies. Yeah, and even when he died, they thought that he was going to be resurrected. When he finally didn't resurrect, the cult started to fall apart. The surviving widow of this man owned all these houses. They built this really elaborate structure. It reminded me of I don't know if we have any Lost fans here, but it reminds me of the Dharma Society, where they had all these houses and they had like a general store, they had a theater, they had a wood shop, and they had one of the earliest generators. It was a huge monster. They bought it for like $13,000, but this was probably like in 1900, 1910 or somewhere around there.
Wow.
And it was so popular as far as the electrical stuff that they were doing at the time, that Thomas Edison himself, who lived close to that area, would come over and perform experiments there. It was a really neat place, man. But they had like this wood shop, and they had this huge sickle, like Children of the Corn sickle.
Oh my
And
gosh.
when we got,
Malachi.
I picked it right off. I picked it up, and I was like, hey, it's not tied down, man. I'm kind of scared to camp here now. I'm thinking that this is like a creepy setting for Friday the 13th. But it was fun. The next day they put tie wraps on it. I think they saw me playing with it.
They're probably scared of you, Tom.
But yeah, it was a
They
cult.
thought Breaking
was,
Bad was.
these
happening.
people were all dressed like in 3-piece suits in Florida and clearing out the land, and they did a lot of cool things, but they were just freaking off the rockers, man.
Yeah. So the last part about the organizational part is it said, talk and act like a prophet. People will take action on their own accord. So there's no forcing people into this. You want people to be volunteers. It's saying don't be a dictator, in other words, because that will push people away.
And John, can I know
Sure.
I'm just full of examples right now.
Go ahead.
But I also see this, being in jujitsu, and I've done kung fu in the past. I've always been involved in martial arts in my life. And I've seen this in the martial arts community where you have a teacher and they become so mystical, and and people believe everything they say, and they start taking the art and almost make it into a religion. And it becomes very spiritual for people, but they start elevating this person who's the coach or the teacher or the sifu or the sensei or whatever their name might be, as someone that's above, like magic. And it's scary because I've seen, schools that these people just think that this guy like walks on water. And I think that happens in, yoga. Sometimes you have yogis that will do that. I've seen that in certain exercise programs that are out there that are real popular, and people they get that us versus you, it becomes the, all right,
Yeah.
maybe a diet, the way, you got to follow a certain diet to be, with us, or you're against us. If you're eating that, and then people will criticize you, they'll look down their nose at you because you're eating the wrong things. It's like, oh, I'm afraid to eat around people. Those are just some things that, we see in everyday life that use this model.
Yeah. We're getting more and more. We're getting closer and closer with each step to the us versus them dynamic. Hold your horses, buddy. Step number 4, disguise your source of income. Become living proof of your belief system and never be seen as being money hungry or hungry for power. And if you think about it, go back to number 2, is emphasizing the visual and sensual over the intellectual. These guys who are at front of the big mansions, flashing, big wads of cash in front of their Italian sports car, or some other sign of wealth, and look at me and look at the celebrities I know and all this stuff. They don't appear money hungry, but all the same time, they are wanting you to send your money in and learn how to do this for yourself. I just have a big problem with that. But again, you don't really know how they made their money, because it's disguised. So number 5, Tom, I know you've been just dying to get to step number 5. This is set up an us versus them dynamic. Now, this is an exclusive club unified by a bond of common goals, and there are devious enemies who are out to ruin it and against us.
And they're called the Democrats, according to Rush Limbaugh. But
Yeah,
if you're a fan of Ed Schultz, they're the Republicans.
yeah, I mean it's played in both parties.
Left wing versus right wing.
Yeah, I mean you see this all the time. Don't elect so and so because the sky is going to fall in, our country is going to collapse. Uh, dogs and cats are going to sleep together. There's going to be mass hysteria. It's it's terrible. It's us versus them dynamic.
This is John working in radio. This is I've worked with these people. I've run shows for these type of people. I mean, you have Rush Limbaugh, you have Sean Hannity, you have Glenn Beck, you have Ed Schultz, which I mentioned. I did a broadcast with this guy, and he was back. We used to play him. I don't know if he was on Air America, but we had a station that syndicated Air America, which was a Democratic brand, and then we had like another station that was a Republican brand with Rush Limbaugh and Hannity and some other shows. And I was working during the election. It was Super Tuesday, and I had to do a remote because Ed Schultz had come down. So we had a theater, and we have a crowd full of people, and we're taking calls. And I thought that President Bush had lost the election to Kerry. I mean, really, when I walked out of there, I was like, oh, well, when I hear, yeah, Kerry's taking the lead, and everything that was promoted there and talked about, I thought Kerry won. And then I got out and I watched the news. I go, Kerry didn't win. It was Bush. And I felt like I had been brainwashed because I had been in this environment. And, I'm not saying I was voting for, rooting for either one at that moment, but I thought, because I was in that group of people that were so gung-ho on their candidate, that they had won. It was a really weird environment.
Yeah, and if you notice that, you can see that now in any type of political discussion. You see whoever you're rooting for, they are going to win that election, and the polls lie. Everyone, it's going to be a landslide, this or that. And when you get into that group mentality, you're not necessarily even looking. I mean, and I know that I'm biased too for my own, political viewpoints. I know that I'm blindsided. I don't want to see what the other candidates say because I'm not going to vote for them. I don't care what they say. It doesn't matter. And
right, you don't have trust or faith.
Yeah, I mean, and I'm just saying that we all turn a blind eye. Once you make that decision and you're in that group, you become very committed to whatever that group is about. That right there is cult-like. Is following blindly, making decisions or taking actions based on emotion rather than intellect.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, that is key to cult-like decision. Now, what was interesting about this us versus them dynamic is Greene is saying, if there isn't an enemy, invent one.
Mm-hmm.
Because again, it is a way or a mechanism to bond people together to a unified cause. Any political party has one sole purpose, and that is to gather power within the government. It doesn't matter what they say, what they're about. At the end of the day, any political party is about power, money and power. But people tend to forget that and think that they stand for something more. And if you know anything about politics and government, and this is not a political show, but when our congressmen are voting for legislation, they are not ethically bound to vote according to party line. So for that reason alone, It really doesn't matter what party they believe in. It matters how much money the lobbyists are giving them. That's going to determine their vote. That's the end. That's the end of my political discussion. I'm getting off my soapbox.
John's rant.
But you know, so those are the 5 steps in order to start, a cult.
So start one today, my friends.
Yeah, and what was interesting too, in some of the examples and some of the stories that Greene tells about, it made me think, if you're trying to start a cult and you're not having much success, maybe you need to look somewhere else. Maybe you're looking in the wrong places to find the right audience. And there were some examples of within this law about a charlatan who was in Vienna, I believe, and Vienna were very straight-laced and didn't really. They were against, spiritual and magical people, and this guy was a spiritual and magical person trying to take advantage of people. And so, what did he do? He left. He went somewhere else and started his cult elsewhere. I think too, it's important to mention groupthink, and that is definitely a part of being in a cult. We have a tendency to doubt, and it's logical. I mean, and it's rational to doubt things and to be skeptical, but our ability to reason is often broken down when we're in a group. And if you think about peer pressure, that when you're in with a certain group, you can there can be pressure to behave or act in a different way that you might not do if you were just by yourself. But within that group, you have a desire to fit in. So, when in Rome, do as the Romans do.
Yeah, you don't remember you weren't with me when we went streaking, right? Were you part of that group?
No, I was not. I heard about it though. I do. That does. I
was probably about.
I don't remember where.
Probably about 11 or 12 years old, and I remember there was a bunch of us, and we decided, back in the 70s, the popular thing to do was streaking. They used to even have a popular radio skit called The Streak. So we decided that we were going to, all those boys that were hanging out together, we're going to take off our clothes and streak across the military cadet circle. Remember that? It was just a circle.
Oh, yeah.
It was a big Hollywood Boulevard where we grew up. It's a 6-lane road or something like that, but it had a big circle in the middle. It went around this military academy. So we decided we're going to run from there to across the street where there's some dentist office and stuff. And so we're running, butt naked, and the cars all of a sudden start two of them come following us, and we're running, and like one kid jumps over the hedges and scrapes his ass when he's jumping over the hedges. The other kid's going another way. And all I remember is them saying, I remember seeing Tom's white ass, because I was running straight and the headlights were shining right on my ass. And it was like a beacon.
Was this at night?
Yeah. Yeah, it was at night.
You must have been older than 11 or 12, because
no, I wasn't.
Mom wasn't letting you out at 11 or 12 at night.
No, we were probably sleeping over at a friend's house or something. It was nighttime. I mean, it was the evening, and it was dark.
I'm sure it wasn't dark with your white ass. There's a full moon out tonight. No, that's just Tom.
That's Tom's ass. What that has to do with the cult, I don't know, but it was fun.
It's scary stuff.
It was pure pressure. What I was getting at, it was pure pressure to do that. We did a lot of many things there with pure pressure. In fact, bombing the Riverside Academy cadets, we used to term river rats, with oranges. We used to stand on the.
I'd say we pelted them with.
Yeah, we stood from a parking garage and we chucked oranges and nailed them as they were doing their laps around the military circle.
Tried to steal their hats.
Yep, shot bottle rockets at them. One time I was there in that same area, and we shot a bunch of bottle rockets, and they were like in formation. They're all in their dress, uniforms, and their commanders were out there, and all of a sudden the guy blew a whistle and a whole platoon started chasing us. They were like, ah! We would have got our ass kicked. But luckily we had a little head start on them.
What this has to do with positive change, laws of power,
Peer pressure. You
I have no
do it sometimes, and we've all faced it.
we learn from our mistakes. I'll
right.
tell you that much. So I guess we're coming to the end of this episode and of this law. We hope that you learned something, and we'll just put that Robert Greene does note that playing with people's emotions and their desires and wants and desires can be very dangerous, especially in a group. If your group turns on you, that could be extremely dangerous for the leader of that group. So he advises, be on top of everything and have your bags packed. Be ready to skip town. We're certainly not advising on creating a cult, but I do think, though, I really do think, I know we started out talking about this, that so many today in the internet world and just in the regular world are trying to do exactly this. They are trying to create a cult, a group of people who act upon emotion and do not really think through what the leader is really saying and what the leader is really trying to do, and that is take advantage of them to play upon their emotions, upon their desires, and trying to promote positive change as something you can just throw your money at, and that one person, that leader, can do for you.
Now, I have to say, some of them have been successful at it and have actually got people, really good results. It's just you really have to think before you jump on the bandwagon with these things. Because John, you and I we've seen people that have been successful with this kind of, they're not necessarily out to try to deceive someone. They've used this, build a cult like formula, if you might say, to apply it to their business, and it's worked out for them. They've found themselves in positions where people, they didn't set out to be, a guru or a certain leader, but they've reached that status in other people's eyes, and they've had very good success with this, and they used a lot of those, techniques that we just talked about, the 5 steps.
Yeah, no, I agree with what you're saying. I'm just saying that nothing is guaranteed, and personal positive change is really something I think that you need to start within and control for yourself. It's always good to learn from other people. I think hopefully that's why you're listening to this podcast, is so that you can learn more about yourself and create positive change in your life. What I'm saying is, don't just follow people blindly. Even what Tom and I say, do your research. Think about what we're saying. Tell us if you think we're wrong about something. It's quite possible.
John, I've been thinking we should start a cult. Keep it vague, keep it simple. That's about us. Emphasize the visual and sensual over the intellectual. What we could do is, I've just got, my family just got suckered into the essence oils, which are popular right now. And it's another one of those things I was talking about earlier, where it's a multi-level marketing thing where, you can become a vendor and sell your oils. And I'm not saying it's bad, because they really smell good. But I remember when I worked in the health food industry when I was younger, we sold oils and they were nowhere as expensive as the oils that they sell. I mean, some of these oils cost like $90 a bottle. And it's like, and they come up with these effects that they claims, oh, this will do this for your health, this will do that. And you kind of wonder, well, is there any evidence? I don't see any scientific proof that will do it. Is this someone that, has wrote up on a marketing brochure that this helps your sinuses, this will prevent you from getting a cold, this oil makes you alert, and all I think is they smell nice. And what I was thinking is, is we could get our own oil. In fact, we could use stink bomb, because I remember when I worked at a health food store, I had this lady that came in and she was stealing our essence oils. And I had this little bottle. It said Morning Breeze perfume, and it was stink perfume. It was the sulfur liquid that they put inside stink bombs. So I put it out there, and she shoplifted it. I could imagine her giving that as a Christmas gift. It would have been great. But we could use that as our, since we're swift kicking ass, that could be our scent. You could open up the bottle of that, and boom, you think of our show.
Smell
It'd
like
be very
ass?
unique.
I don't know, man. I don't
I know,
know.
I'm getting out there.
I mean, how do you organize that? How do you create the hierarchy? Is it first you're in the apprenticeship, you're getting your ass kicked by everyone?
We get some of those things. I've seen them in their dominatrix tools, right? And all it is it's like a flapjack. It's like a handle with a sole of a boot on it. And you could smack each other's ass, and then you have a big footprint welt on your ass. That could be another tool of the trade.
Well, if anyone is interested in what'd you call it, the flapjack, the boot?
Yep, the boot.
Email us. We'll make sure that we offer that. If anyone's interested, I'm not above trying to sell some product, but
you didn't do your
if people think it helps them, but yeah, no. So this disguise your source of income, and set up the us versus them dynamic. And if you do those 5 steps, you're going to have a cult. Yeah. You're going to have followers. You're going to have tons of money because they're sending you money, and life will be good until the group turns on you and you have to run.
Just don't drink the Kool-Aid.
They realize that you duped them.
All right. Don't drink the Kool-Aid.
Yeah. So I think that about does it for this episode. We'll get back to some of our own stuff soon, but we want to make sure we get through the 48 Laws of Power. This is John Curren.
Make sure you check out swiftkickingtheass.com. There, sign up for our free membership site. Get John's simple spending plan, along with some courses that will help you make some personal change in your life. Thanks for listening.
Yeah,
Peace.
Thanks for listening, everybody. Peace.